Well, hi everyone, welcome to our daily blog today. I'm standing in for somebody as they can't do the blog today. I don't know how you're finding these blogs with Walter Brueggemann. I'm really enjoying them because Walter Brueggemann is someone who really knows his Old Testament just as much as many people know the New Testament. He's able to remind us of many of these old stories that is so easy to forget about. And today is no exception. We're going to look at a passage he's entitled Power for Life. Now, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. In the Old Testament, there are what is known as prophets. And the prophets we can easily see as people who could perhaps tell the future or had some insight as to what's going to happen as the story unfolds. But that's not really how prophets work in the Bible. Prophets in the Old Testament tend to be people who almost embody the heartbeat of God. They both are able to point people to God and also to remind particularly kings of Israel of what God's heart and way is. And some listen to prophets and others sadly don't. If you've ever read the first and second book of Kings, you'll know what I mean. And one of the most famous of all the Old Testament prophets is a prophet called Elijah. And Elijah is the person we're going to look at today, and one of his prophecy, one of the things that happened to him. So this is what the passage is from 1 Kings chapter 17. The word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, "Go from here, Elijah, and turn eastwards. Hide yourself by the Wadi Kerith, which is to the east of the Jordan. You shall drink from that wadi, and I have commanded the ravens to come and feed you there." Now that simple passage sounds sort of fairly tame. The idea that Elijah is told by God to go to a particular wadi east of the Jordan, and there he will find water and the ravens will come and feed him. It's sort of it sounds a bit like Francis of Assisi sort of passage. But this particular passage from 1 Kings chapter 17 is one of the defining passages of the Old Testament and indeed into the New Testament. Because in 1 Kings chapter 17, Elijah obeys God and then is sent by God from this Wadi Kerith to another place called Zarephath up near Sidon. And there he meets a widow, and the widow has a son, and that son is very poorly and eventually dies. And the widow has been kind to Elijah, sharing her food with him at a time of a famine and sharing water with him. And Elijah prays for the son of this widow, and God hears his prayer and brings him to life again. Now, that sounds an amazing story, but it shows us something, that at the very heart of God is the idea of sharing life, hence why Walter Brueggemann calls this the power to life. And it's easy to see Lent as a time of lots of thou shalt nots, giving up chocolate, giving up all sorts of things. But ultimately, he's wanting to share his life with you and with me and with us in our world, even in these days that we're going through. And that's the same yesterday in the time of Elijah. It's the same today, and it, God willing, will be the same always. So there's something here revealed about the very character of God, that he's always trying to bring new hope, new life into your life, into my life. And this story of Elijah at Zarephath with the widow is strangely mimicked and picked up again in Luke's Gospel, chapter 7, when Jesus goes to another widow, this time in a place called Nain. She too has a son, and this son also dies and is being carried out of the house by the funeral party on a briar. And the woman cries out to him, "Please, will you do something?" And he too hears the voice of the woman and it says, his heart went out to her. He leant on the briar and healed the boy, and he said, rise up and you'll be made well. Now the key word here is rise up, because if you follow these things, a bit like discovering sort of little clues, if you ever watch detective programs, it's good to look out for these things. The word rise up pretty often and almost always is the same word as resurrection. And so what we get is a link here between not just simply healing, but also being raised up, being brought to new life. And this is what actually happens for the widow's son at Nain. And of course, imitates what had happened with Elijah at Zarephath. The key difference, of course, it wasn't God who did this in Nain, it was Jesus. And of course, the disciples then are flabbergasted and wonder, who in the world is this person who stands before them, if he's actually doing what God has done. So what we get from all this? What we get from this is that at the very heart of God is this desire to bring wholeness, to bring healing, to bring new life. And of course we can wonder what that might look like in all that's going on in Ukraine, or perhaps in your own individual lives with various things that are going on. I'll finish up with a story that for me was one of those moments where perhaps God intervened. There was a gentleman I met who was sadly dying, and dying quite young, from cancer. And he was in hospital, and he was, he would say, not particularly a Christian, but he asked to see me. And I went to see him, and I tried to be as helpful as I could, taking his wife in to see him, etc. And then I kept getting this voice in my head about God was going to work a miracle in this gentleman's life. Where did that voice come from? If you try and make it happen, of course, it's often then your thinking, and however well-intentioned, but just occasionally it may be that it happens outside of who you are. And, you know, this was this gentleman's life. It's holy ground. It's not something just to try and chalk one up that somehow God has done a healing miracle and making somebody into an object. So you need to approach it tenderly and carefully. But the voice wouldn't go away. So I went to see this gentleman, and after many caveats in a wonderful English sort of way, I shared with him that I just kept hearing this voice saying, I'm going to work a miracle in your life. And he said, I know exactly what that miracle is. I've got my faith back. And with that, he found great peace as he then went through the last weeks of his life. So perhaps the ultimate healing is the peace that we have with God, the reconciliation of the relationship we have with God. And may that be yours and mine and ours as we journey through this Lent. So Walter Brueggemann's right. Maybe in the midst of Lent, it's not about walking into despair or giving up things or into the darkness. It's actually discovering the light and the hope and the love. Have a good rest of the day. God bless. Bye for now.